When Kaname Sudou receives an invitation for the app Darwin's game from his friend Hamada, he is immediately curious to try out the game. Although his classmate Kimda warns him strongly not to open the app, he accepts the invitation and starts the game. Suddenly, a snake jumps out of his screen and bites his neck. Kaname wakes up confused in his school's hospital room, but he dismisses the snake as a hallucination and wants to go home to recover from the shock. Kimda warns him again not to open the game app, but Kaname cannot contain his curiosity on his way home. He opens the game once again and accepts a combat challenge from Banda-kun, an aggressive man in a panda costume, who suddenly appears next to him on the subway. Banda-kun attacks the perplexed Kaname, but he manages to fend him off and flees through the city. The panda chases Kaname incessantly, and not even a policeman can stop the violent panda. He already saw his tombstone engraved with death by a panda when Kimda appears and saves Kaname. However, in doing so, Banda-kun injures him severely. Despite Kimda's injury, he and Kaname manage to escape and hide in a car park. Kaname now finally realizes that this is no ordinary mobile game. It is a real-life game with no way to escape, and the stakes are life or death. Kimda explains to him why Banda-kun is such a strong opponent. He can make himself invisible through his sigil, an ability each player is given through the bite of the snake, and is then able to master in the most natural way. Kaname and Kimda soon realize there is no point in hiding from Banda-kun, as their opponent can track Kaname's location through the app. They conclude that Kaname must leave the injured Kimda behind in order to lure the panda away from him. He fights off Banda-kun's attacks in close combat, but eventually doesn't seem to stand a chance against him. However, the fight comes to an abrupt end when Kaname's invisible opponent is suddenly hit by a car, ending the fight in Kaname's favor. Banda-kun's lifeless body is teleported piece by piece, leaving only a pixelated outline on the ground. Kaname is familiar with these pixel outlines. They have been appearing all over the city lately, and people have taken them for modern street art. But now Kaname realizes the truth: they are the remains of those who lost the Darwin's game. After his fight, Kaname rushes back to his friend Kimda, but all he finds is just another pixel outline. High-ranking player Shuka Karino learns of Kaname's victory over Banda-kun and is amazed at the rookie's win over his strong opponent. She wants to meet Kaname and invites him to an abandoned warehouse, but Shuka isn't sure if she can trust Kaname and asks him to reveal his sigil. However, Kaname can't give her an answer, which arouses Shuka's suspicion, and she challenges him to a fight. Kaname is able to fend off Shuka's attack by temporarily blinding her with a flashing light. But even Shuka's blind attacks are immensely powerful, and Kaname recognizes her sigil. She can control big chains and snake-like motions, piercing her enemies with the sharp tips. While Kaname tries to escape the chains, he hears a voice inside of him, which finally leads him to discover his sigil. He is able to summon any weapon he has touched before. A gun that was delivered to his home earlier now suddenly appears in his hand, and he is able to keep Shuka in check with it. Shuka sees no option but to admit her defeat. Kaname lets out a sigh of relief and faints. The next morning, Kaname wakes up in Shuka's bed. She asks him to create a clan with her, as joining forces is a popular tactic by many players in Darwin's game, to fight together, defend each other, and collect points together. Kaname agrees, but he learns that he has to get above fighting Class B2 first. An ideal opportunity to level up presents itself to Kaname shortly thereafter. He receives a mysterious invitation in the game. Some selected players are allowed to participate in a treasure hunt in Shibuya. Kaname and Shuka consider it wise to explore Shibuya before the start of the event. During their tour, Shuka explains important information to Kaname about Darwin's game, or D-game, as they call it in public to keep its existence a secret. Moreover, when Kaname checks his account balance at the ATM, he is overwhelmed by yet another surprise. The points he has collected are not just a score in the game, but are transferred directly to his bank account as real money. In the Shibuya shopping center, Kaname's mobile phone is suddenly snatched away by Inyakai, who is thus able to lure him into a dead-end street and challenge. Inyakai was able to track Kaname down through the information he bought from the player Rain Kashiwagi, known as the Analyst. Rain makes her living in the game by collecting and selling interesting data and information. Since word had already spread that newcomer Kaname had defeated both the new killer Banda-kun and the invincible Queen Shuka, he presented an interesting target for Inyakai. But Inyakai's attack on Kaname turns out to be only a short fight before Shuka rushes to his aid, forcing Inyakai to surrender. Suddenly, The treasure hunt begins, and the players are transferred to separate locations. Kaname finds himself in a hotel room and receives information about the treasure hunt. The goal of the 300 participants is to each find at least 3 golden rings within 24 hours. However, there is a catch: there are only 300 rings in total. Using the dimensional camera on his phone, Kaname immediately finds his first ring under his bed, but he isn't able to keep it for long, as he is attacked outside his hotel room by a player with a machine gun. He hands over his ring to the opponent, who spares Kaname's life and leaves through the elevator. Kaname is eager to leave the hotel and find Shuka, but this proves impossible as all the stairs are covered in proliferating thicket. Kaname sees the elevator as his only way of exiting the building. But Rain, the analyst, appears at the last moment and stops him from stepping into it. As the lift doors open, Kaname sees the reason for Ryan's warning. His previous attacker with the machine gun is lying motionless on the ground, in the clutches of a massive plant. Rain immediately recognizes the work of the powerful player, the florist, who has trapped the whole hotel in plants. As Kaname and Rain search for a way out of the hotel, a chilling thought occurs to them. Why was the body of the attacker in the elevator still there and not turned into a pixel outline? Just as the two realize the implications of this circumstance, they get an answer to their question. A crowd of zombie-like players attacks them. These players seem to not have been killed by the plants, but rather poisoned, and are now under the control of the florist. We hope you like the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to recaps Annie for watching such amazing content in the future.